Welcome to Travel Tech Israel, the fourth edition. We actually have a lot of people, so this room is going to be very packed. We're going to keep our session for very tight. You have here on the back of your name tag the exact itinerary. So as you can see, we were supposed to start at 9 to 9:15. The good news is that I don't have a presentation. The bad news is also that I don't have a presentation because sometimes I tend to overspeak. But even if I have a presentation, I tend to do it, so it doesn't matter. What I want to do is, before we start, is just to give you some housekeeping notes. And the main thing is, again, the itineraries, the schedule of all the sessions are here. You're always going to see it on the back and what is the next session. You will see all the breakout sessions. Wi-Fi, if you need, is open. So there is no need for password. At the bottom here, you see Slido. So if you want to ask any questions, and we want you to ask as many questions as possible during the panels, please go to slido.com and you just type the hashtag TT119. It's a mistake. It's TTI19. I didn't catch this one. TTI19, and then you just type your question, and the question going to show up on the speaker. Lian, Brian, you can sit here in the front. Carl, if you want or not, you're going to speak. You're going to sit in the front. John, that you can sit here in the front if you want. So you're going to go to slido.com, TTI19, and then you type whatever question you want. So please ask as many questions as possible, but try for them to be professional and to the point. So last year people said, what time is lunch? And the air conditioning is too strong, which is all valid questions, but not necessarily for the panelists on stage. So feel free to contact myself, Alon, the producer, or anybody from the team here in Paris Center. So this is about Slido. The last thing is, again, we're going to have a lot of networking. People can stay outside. You can go outside smoking, can do whatever you want. In the past, we always had to push a lot of people back to the room. We're not going to do it. So if you want to attend a specific panel, just try to look at this session, at the name tag on the back so you can see exactly the schedule. So just before I introduce our first speaker, I just want to say that this is our fourth event. This conference starts with the objective is, the way I call it, is to align the demand and supply. So the demand in the travel industry. So the demand is the travel industry itself, and the supply are the different technology solutions that we find in abundance here in Israel. I'm glad to say that, again, this is the fourth session that we're doing. It started actually 2.5 years ago, and we do it once a year, but the first one was in October here in the Paris Center of Innovation and Peace, which is the perfect setting for this type of event. And obviously, in our industry, we always say the most important thing, especially in the hotel industry, is location, location, location. So this is it. You know, on the left, you can see the old cemetery of Jaffa. That's not where you want to end up. You prefer being on the beach here at the front, and it's a beautiful day. It's going to be a little bit warmer later on, but the location is amazing. So as I mentioned, the purpose of the event was to align the demand and supply. And we see in the first event that we had here in Paris Center, we had one international speaker. Almost all the other international end up canceling, some of them 2 days before, a week before. And the person was from Booking Holding Group, which I still very grateful for Susan. And every year, Booking send other people. And we have here repeat customer, repeat people are coming back and back, you know, from Agoda, from Hostel World, from Skyscanner, and from many other organizations. And today we actually have more international travel organizations than startups, which is the first time that we flip the balance. But it's all about quality, not quantity. And I'm also glad to see yesterday, you know, a lot of the stuff that we are talking about in travel tech is how we as an industry should collaborate. And in my opinion, this is the best industry to work for. And I mean, I think these are the nicest people that you can meet normally because it's part of the DNA of the industry. And I can hear it sometimes even from the startups, from the entrepreneurs saying, you know, like, how come people are so nice when you go to an event? I say, like, what do you mean? I say, no, they're nice. You talk to them. They talk to you. I say, that's normal, no? I say, no. When you go to a fintech event, cyber attack, it's a cyber event and stuff like this, that's not how it is. So here it's something that we are very proud of. And I was very happy to see there was a lot of collaboration because we're really big on collaborating, and we think that we as an industry should collaborate and understand that technology, we compete really with other vertical and not with each other. So it was really nice for me to see yesterday Booking.com sitting side by side in our reception with LastMinute.com and actually meeting with the startup. So we don't even need to introduce them separately, let alone that, you know, all the corporate travel. So Miriam from BCD, first thing she makes friend with Julian from Amex, and you see a lot of very good relationship within the industry, which are important for collaboration, because at the end of the day, we want to bring as much innovation into the industry that all of us can use, and we all use it in different ways, and that's what's going to differentiate between us, and not if we have the technology or not having the technology. So with that said, thank you very much again for all of you for coming. And I want to introduce our first speaker. Our first speaker is Maggie Raw. Maggie, where are you? Right here. Ah, here, okay. So wait, she sent me this not very easy to read bio, but you know, I try to remember. So Maggie is with Focusrite. So if you don't know Focusrite, you should, because it's probably the biggest research entity in the travel industry, especially anything to do with online travel agency, digital, et cetera, et cetera. She's a senior analyst with Focusrite. They have several events around the world, and she's been with them now for how many years? 7. For 7 years. And she's a senior analyst, and she's based in New York. And she's going to give you some of the pointers and the most interesting aspect of some of the most recent research from 2018, early 19 as well, about the state of the travel tech around the world, where startups are, where money is, and some of the main trends that they see. So please join me by welcoming Maggie. Maggie, thank you very much.
Thank you, Ram. One complaint, you didn't tell me to bring a suit to sneak in a lunchtime swim. That's really probably a deliberate decision. And I also, those of you who have been, so in addition to the research, Focusrite does do some events. And those of you who've been, you can let me know later if we are one of the friendly ones. Or are we more Travel Tech Israel, or are we more FinTech? So I'm pressing the green go ahead button, and I'm not sure if I'm on yet. But what I'm going to share with you once it's up and running is a quick view of market sizing, some trends, a look at what's going on with startups, and some of the opportunities that we see. Definitely don't have time to get to everything I'd love to talk about, but I will cover as much as I can, and I'll be here all day. So when Focusrite sizes the global online travel market, typically we're talking about these 5 categories: air, hotel, rail, cruise, and car rental. And when we say online, we mean sold via OTAs and suppliers' websites and apps. And that total has about almost tripled from 2009 through 2019, $243 billion US to 707. Of course, when we add, more recently, we have been undertaking the really challenging task of adding global private accommodations and activities to that total. there are a couple of two of the most fastest growing online segments, and those would make up about a seventh of online travel globally, and as I said, the fastest growing segments of travel. Another major factor affecting travel globally is the growth of Asia Pacific. If you add together the US, Europe, and APAC, they make up about 80% of global travel. And APAC over those 10 years is really growing quickly and changing the face of the global travel industry. So from 2009 through 2019, for overall travel, APAC went from about a third to 37% of those three taken together. And online, much more dramatic shift from about a quarter to a third. And there's still a lot of room left to grow in that region. Australia and Japan are fairly mature online markets. China is close to on par now with the US and Europe in terms of online maturity. Southeast Asia has a ton of room left to grow, and I think that ultimately China will have one of the highest online penetration rates in the world and probably exceed what we see in the US and Europe. So over that same timeline, the past 10 years, this is the global online penetration, gone from about a quarter of travel bookings taking place online to more than 50% by 2021. So I threw in a couple extra years there. Of course, when you look at it country by country, there's global and there's the regions, but the story varies significantly country by country and segment by segment. So if you're someone in this crowd is targeting hotels, the story is quite different than it is for somebody who's targeting air. And then again, really country by country, different stories playing out. But the two highest online penetration rates we see are in the UK and Scandinavia. And again, China is joining the US and Europe with one of the highest online penetration rates in the world. When it comes to mobile, so I spend a lot of time working on Asia-based reports and also in Asia, and I often hear that, oh, Asia is just huge for mobile. And well, there's truth to that. When it comes down to it, currently for actual travel bookings, China is in a class by itself. About close to 80% of online travel is booked on mobile there, which is much, much higher, of course, than the US at 29%. And when you look specifically at OTAs, China is more in the 90% plus, almost fully saturated for mobile. So that is the next place to look for what's next. Another significant trend that we've seen over the past several years has been consolidation in the OTA space. So these three companies, Booking Holdings, Expedia, and Ctrip, own several brands beneath them, and together they combine to account for more than 90% of global OTA bookings. And of course, that gives rise to the question, what room is there for entry? And I know that a lot of you, of course, are in the B2B space, and these are potential clients for you, but there is chatter about whether this is squashing innovation in the travel space. So, however, as you all know, entrepreneurs don't usually see the upside, and so I'm going to share with you some of the impressive numbers we see in travel startups. So, we've been tracking travel startups funding and founding for about 10 years, and we've got more than 2,000 startups in our database, reaching close to $20 billion in funding over those years. And 2018 was actually a humongous year for startup funding. The fastest growth we have seen, adding more funding in that 1 year than all of the previous 3 years combined. So that is promising. Put another way, a third of all of the funding since 2009 was raised just in 2018. So that's the good news. The other news is that money is going to fewer and fewer companies. So we see fewer startups. The blue line is funding rounds. The red line is the average funding per round. And you see that they crossed around 2017. And It's a little early for 2019. Obviously just one quarter. There may have been some smaller rounds that we haven't caught yet, but this separation is accelerating as the winners are selected and showered with huge amounts of money in some cases. So where we see this particular slide, we have data on many more categories, but I've selected the top horizontals for both number of companies and share of funding. And those startups that are close to targeting the booking are quite plentiful, and also the most well-funded overall. But we also see really strong activity in the SaaS space, in artificial intelligence, and data and analytics. Wherever you see the blue line higher than the orange line there, you've got more funding, a higher share of funding versus the share of companies in the total. And that can happen for a few reasons. Again, it could be winners being selected early. It also could be that there's less startup activity than the market is actually looking for. A few more trends in the startup space. We again are seeing more funding going to mid and late stage companies. One reason for that might be that incubators and accelerators are playing a much bigger role. And so companies are coming out of those a little more mature and ready to be funded. And the hotel and private accommodations segments have both the most startups and the most funding. So a few more trends. So looking at the top of the funnel in travel, you saw before that slide of Expedia, Booking, and Ctrip combining for about 90% of global online travel, or global OTA bookings. But there's a lot more going on in this space. So looking here at Airbnb, Google, and Amazon, Airbnb, of course, has made some interesting moves to become much more like an OTA than simply a private accommodations site. The acquisition of Hotel Tonight, the investment in Oyo, and Oyo's acquisition of Atleisure. Airbnb, of course, also doing interesting things-ish with experiences, and everyone is waiting for when they're going to do what in air. So I'm going to talk a little bit more specifically about the other three, and I'm going to go over because I thought I had 15 minutes. Okay. So Google, recently much noise has been made about them bringing everything together under one umbrella and making changes in how the trips function as one single stop entity. So I'm sure you guys have seen those stories. I do want to point out something that was a little quieter, but I think really interesting, which was the rollout of Google One member prices. This gives travelers who opt into Google One access to hotel discounts, and is an interesting signal that Google is doing maybe a little bit more than just creating a fantastic user experience. Additionally, so when we were in, a few of you were there as well, in Amsterdam, just as our conference was wrapping, someone on my India team sent me an email with these really interesting screen grabs and said, Amazon is linking up with Cleartrip to sell flights in India. And this is a move that everyone's been waiting for. What is Amazon going to do for their second move into travel? In this case, Amazon in India is in a different competitive environment than it is anywhere else globally. They are competing with Flipkart and Paytm, which have had travel products for years, and their payments services is much more important in India than it is certainly in the US or Europe. And so adding flights I see as this point as more of a competitive move within India than it is a signal that Amazon is going to be aggressively going after the OTA space in the near term. So talking about Ctrip's situation in China, we've known for a little while now that search's role is diminishing in that market. And this is our recent research on how travelers select a destination. And the columns on the left oh no, they're backward. No, they're correct, sorry. that top one is not supposed to be OTA though. I need to redo that slide. Okay, sorry, but in most markets, search engines play a humongous role. I believe that top one is search engine, and the second one down should be meta search. But anyway, in all of the markets that we looked at, OTAs played a really small role in travel discovery. But China was the one exception where it was by far the leading place to start a travel search. Baidu is not as powerful as Google in a way, and the app environment has people starting their searches elsewhere. So that sounds kind of nice for Ctrip, that they've got an interesting grip on the top of the funnel. Did you guys freeze me because I went over or because I made a mistake on my slide? Ah! But in actuality, Ctrip is facing competition or threats on the periphery from some apps that command a ton of consumer attention that aren't necessarily in travel. I really would like to. Can someone scroll me forward? I think I'm going to run out of time, but you can catch me. Oh, here we go. Yeah, go. Okay. I'll catch up with you after. Thanks. So in the absence of search being so dominant, these other apps are targeting the top of the funnel that Ctrip currently owns for travel. So this is one called Xiaohongshu, or Little Red Book, that is primarily a fashion app, but has also added a lot of travel content and offers a really robust user experience for discovery. And on recent focus groups in the Chinese market among outbound travelers, this was one that was suddenly mentioned a ton and not so much the previous years. So Ctrip faces competition from a number of other apps from outside of travel for the top of the funnel and consumer attention. So these are some of the things that as I said, don't have time to talk really about everything that I want to, but some other trends and opportunities that we see within online travel is an opportunity for suppliers to do more with the upsell. Hotels have a great grip on your attention once you arrive in destination, and in our opinion, they've really underutilized that. Similarly, air is the first product that most travelers book. And I think that airlines are doing interesting things, Qantas and AirAsia chief among them, with selling other things besides air. Related to that, improved merchandising and personalization, always been a bit of a holy grail within travel, but I think it's starting to move in interesting ways now. And moving towards a frictionless future, so enabling travelers to more seamlessly integrate all of their searches, all of their bookings, and everything they're interested in into one easy-to-find place has not been done well yet. Loyalty, which used to be a huge deal in the U.S. hotel space, has really been eroded as far as a way that travel suppliers can command travelers either bookings or the decision to book specifically with them, and that is getting harder and harder. And I know that in the hotel space, suppliers would love to see some support in improving that. And finally, connecting the inspiration to travel to the actual booking. So I'm going to leave you with this note. This is what I see as what travelers and entrepreneurs have in common. It's that desire to go somewhere uncharted that no one has gone before. In actuality, it's much easier to follow the crowd. So I'm looking forward to seeing who's doing something interesting. Thank you.